I watched my mother hand my sister the envelope containing $50,000, every cent of my room deposit, and felt absolutely nothing. Maya needs it more than you, Mom said, not even looking at me. She's getting married, and you? You're just going to rent forever anyway. In my first life, I'd sobbed. I'd begged. I'd shown them my lease termination notice, my moving truck reservation, the apartment listing I'd already paid a holding fee for. None of it mattered. Maya got the money, I lost my deposit, my credit score tanked, and I spent the next 3 years in a moldy studio apartment working 3 jobs to rebuild. But that was my first life. This time, I simply smiled. Of course, Mom, Maya deserves it. My sister's eyes narrowed with suspicion, but Mom just looked relieved that I wasn't going to make a scene like last time. If only they knew that in exactly 48 hours, Maya's perfect fiancé would be arrested for fraud, her dream wedding would implode, and that $50,000 would vanish into a black hole of legal fees. And me? I'd already closed on a penthouse. Let me back up. 3 months ago, I died. Nothing dramatic, just a regular Tuesday morning. I was 34, still living paycheck to paycheck, still trying to rebuild from that moment when I was 25 and my family stole my future. I slipped on black ice, hit my head, and that was it. Except it wasn't. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, sunlight streaming through the same faded curtains, my phone alarm playing that annoying ringtone I'd used in college. The date on my phone made my heart stop. March 15th, 9 years in the past, 3 months before my 25th birthday, 3 months before the day that ruined everything. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then I thought I was losing my mind. But after a week of testing, of knowing things before they happened, of remembering conversations word for word, I accepted the impossible truth. I'd been given a second chance, and I was going to do everything differently. The first thing I did was check my bank account. 2 years of savings sat there, untouched. $12,000. In my first life, I'd told my parents about this money. They'd convinced me to invest it in Maya's business venture, a boutique that folded within 6 months. This time, I told no one. The second thing I did was call my Aunt Rachel. In my previous life, I'd been too proud, too desperate to prove I could make it on my own. I'd ignored all the signs that Aunt Rachel, my father's estranged sister, had tried to reach out. She'd sent birthday cards with checks I'd never cashed, returned unopened because Mom said Rachel was toxic and only wanted to cause trouble. Turned out, the only toxic ones were right under my roof. "Is this really Sarah?" Aunt Rachel's voice cracked when she answered. "Your mother told me you never wanted to speak to me again." "That was a lie," I said simply. "Can we meet for coffee?" 3 hours later, I learned the truth about my family that I'd been too naive to see the first time around. Aunt Rachel had inherited a substantial trust from our grandmother, a trust that was supposed to be split between her and my father. But Dad had manipulated their elderly mother, forged documents, and stolen Rachel's half. "I couldn't prove it," Rachel said, tears in her eyes. "By the time I found a lawyer, Mom had passed and your father had already liquidated everything. I tried to warn you, tried to stay in your life, but your mother poisoned you against me." "Tell me everything," I said. Over the next 2 months, I became Aunt Rachel's project. She introduced me to her financial advisor, a sharp woman named Jennifer, who took one look at my savings and said, "We can work with this." "I want to buy property," I told her. "Something that will appreciate fast." Jennifer pulled up listings. "There's a development downtown. They're pre-selling units in a new high-rise. It's risky. The building won't be done for 2 years, but the neighborhood is about to explode. I'm talking 200% appreciation." I knew she was right. In my first life, I'd watched that building go up from my studio apartment window. I'd seen units that sold for $150,000 in pre-construction flip for $450,000 once completed. Those same units were worth $800,000 by the time I died. "I'll take the penthouse," I said. Jennifer blinked. "Sarah, that's $180,000. You have $12,000. "I'll have more, and I have excellent credit." I leaned forward. "I also know for a fact that building will be the most sought-after address in the city within 3 years. Get me a meeting with the developer." It took 2 weeks of negotiation, but we structured a deal. $20,000 down, with the remaining $160,000 due at closing in 2 years. Jennifer co-signed, Aunt Rachel guaranteed half, and I had a plan to earn the rest. Because I remembered everything. I remembered which stocks would split, which cryptocurrency would surge, which small companies would get acquired. I wasn't rich yet, but I would be. I just needed time and access to capital. More importantly, I needed my family to think I was still the same naive Sarah they'd always taken advantage of. So, I played the part perfectly. I worked my retail job at the mall just like before. I ate dinner with Mom, Dad, and Maya every Sunday, smiling through their barbed comments. I listened to Maya's excited planning for her wedding to Derek, the successful investment banker she'd met at a charity gala. In my first life, I'd been genuinely happy for her. I'd thought Derek was charming and kind. I'd believed everything he said about his portfolio, his properties, his family's wealth. This time, I knew the truth. Derek was a con artist running a Ponzi scheme, and it was all about to come crashing down. But I didn't warn her. Why would I? She'd never once shown me kindness. Maya had always been the golden child. Beautiful, charming, ambitious. Everything I wasn't, according to our parents. She'd borrowed money from me she never repaid. She'd taken credit for my ideas at work when we briefly worked together. She'd accidentally spilled wine on my laptop the night before a major presentation, destroying months of work. And she'd laughed about it later with Mom, thinking I couldn't hear. So, no, I didn't warn her about Derek. I just waited. The room deposit situation came exactly as I remembered it. June 15th, 3 months after my rebirth. I'd just turned 25 the week before. I came home from work to find Mom, Dad, and Maya sitting at the kitchen table, that familiar envelope between them. My stomach should have clenched, my heart should have raced. Instead, I felt cold certainty. "Sarah, sweetheart, sit down," Dad said in that tone he used when he was about to ask for something. "We need to talk about your room deposit," Mom added. I sat, folding my hands on the table. "What about it?" "Well, Maya's wedding is in 3 months, and she and Derek need help with the down payment on their house," Dad said. "You've been talking about renting that apartment downtown, and we know you have $50,000 saved for the deposit." Actually, I had $67,000 now, thanks to strategic day trading and a few well-timed cryptocurrency investments. But they didn't need to know that. "We were thinking," Mom continued, "since you're so young and you don't really need to buy right away, maybe you could lend Maya the money, just until she and Derek get settled." "It's not a loan," Maya interjected, her voice sharp. "It's family helping family, that's what we do." In my first life, I'd argued that I'd signed a lease, that I'd lose my deposit if I backed out, that I'd been planning this for years. None of it mattered. They'd worn me down with guilt and manipulation until I'd handed over the money, telling myself I'd get it back. I never did. This time I just smiled. Of course. Family first. The relief on their faces would have been comical if it wasn't so insulting. Did they really think I was that easy? "Really?" Mom asked, surprised. "You're not going to fight us on this?" "Why would I? Maya's getting married. That's important." I turned to my sister. "I'm happy for you." Maya's eyes narrowed. She knew something was off, but she couldn't figure out what. "Thanks," she said slowly. "That's very mature of you." "I'll go get my checkbook," I said, standing up. As I walked to my room, I heard Mom whisper, "See, I told you she'd come around. She's always been such a good girl." A good girl, a doormat, she meant. I wrote the check for $50,000 from my old bank account, the one they knew about, the one I'd kept just enough money in to make this moment possible. My real savings, my investments, my property down payment, all of that was in accounts they'd never seen. Maya took the check like it was her due. No thank you, no promise to pay me back. Just a dismissive nod and a comment about how it was the least I could do after everything they'd done for me. Everything they'd done for me. I almost laughed. They'd given me the smallest bedroom in the house, fed me leftovers while Maya got fresh meals, paid for Maya's private school and college while I worked my way through community college. celebrated every minor achievement of Maya's while barely acknowledging my graduation. But sure, I owed them. Thanks, sis, Maya said, already standing to leave. Derek and I are viewing houses this weekend. I'll send you pictures of the one we choose. She never did, of course. I watched her go, check in hand, and counted down. 48 hours. I spent the next 2 days laying groundwork. I called my landlord and canceled my apartment viewing, the one I'd scheduled purely for appearances. I had coffee with Aunt Rachel and confirmed every detail of my plan. I met with Jennifer to review my investment portfolio. You've turned $12,000 into $67,000 in 3 months, Jennifer said, shaking her head. I don't know how you're doing this, Sarah, but keep it up. You'll have your closing costs covered and then some. I have a good feeling about the market, I said vaguely. The truth was so much stranger than that, but I'd learned not to share it. Even Aunt Rachel didn't know about the rebirth. She just thought I was a savant with investments. On the morning of June 17th, Derek was arrested at his office. I was at my retail job when I got the news alert on my phone. Local investment banker arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. His photo, that same charming smile I remembered, plastered across the screen. I waited for the phone call. It came 30 minutes later. Mom, hysterical. Sarah, you need to come home right now. It's Maya. She's falling apart. Derek's been arrested. It's all over the news. They're saying terrible things. What kind of things? I asked calmly, still folding t-shirts on the display table. Fraud, embezzlement. He scammed dozens of people, Sarah. Millions of dollars. And Maya, her voice broke. The wedding is off. The house fell through. She needs that money back. There it was. What money? I asked innocently. The $50,000. You have to cancel the check. You haven't moved yet, right? You don't need it immediately. Actually, Mom, I deposited that check yesterday. Maya cashed it 3 days ago. The money's gone. A long silence, then. What do you mean, gone? I mean, Maya spent it. That's not my problem. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, you get home right now. Your sister needs you. I hung up. Then I blocked her number, my father's number, and Maya's number. I'd learned in my first life that they'd call dozens of times a day, leaving increasingly hostile voicemails. I'd learned that they'd show up at my work, my apartment, anywhere they could find me. Not this time. I finished my shift, went back to the comfortable 2-bedroom apartment I'd been renting month to month, the one they didn't know, about in a building across town, and opened a bottle of wine. The fallout was spectacular. Over the next week, the news got worse for Derek and, by extension, Maya. Investigators froze all his assets. Victims came forward demanding restitution. The Ponzi scheme had been running for 5 years, and Derek had been living large on other people's money, including Maya's money. My money, technically. She'd given him the $50,000 for investment opportunities. He'd promised to triple it within a year. Instead, it had gone straight into his personal account to fund his luxury lifestyle. Just like all the other money from all the other victims. Maya had lost everything: her fiancé, her reputation, her savings, and her future. And my parents? They'd co-signed on Derek's house purchase. When that fell through, they were on the hook for $20,000 in fees and penalties. I learned all of this from Aunt Rachel, who heard it through the family grapevine. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Maya in 2 weeks. They're trying to find you, Rachel warned. Your mother called me asking if I knew where you were. She said you owed Maya that money. I don't owe Maya anything. I know, but Sarah, they're not going to let this go. Let them try. They did try. They hired a lawyer who sent a demand letter to my old address, the one I'd never actually moved into. They threatened to sue. They called my work repeatedly until I got my manager to ban them from calling. But they couldn't find me. And they couldn't touch my money. Because I'd been smart this time. Everything was in new accounts, under new addresses. My investment portfolio was managed through Rachel's advisor. My property purchase was structured through a trust. I was a ghost to them. Meanwhile, I was thriving. By August, my portfolio had hit $120,000. I'd quit my retail job and taken a position at a tech startup I remembered would be acquired by Google in 18 months. The salary was modest, but the stock options would be worth millions. By October, Maya was working 2 jobs trying to pay off the legal fees from Derek's case. Prosecutors wanted her to testify, claiming she'd known about the fraud. She hadn't. Maya was many things, but she wasn't criminal, but the investigation was destroying her. By December, my parents' house was in pre-foreclosure. Those penalties from Derek's failed house purchase had cascaded into missed mortgage payments and maxed out credit cards. And me? I was closing on my penthouse. The 2 years had passed in my first life while I struggled in poverty. This time, they'd passed while I built an empire. The building downtown had finished construction right on schedule. Units that had sold for $180,000 in pre-construction were now worth $400,000. I'd paid $180,000 total. My unit was now valued at $550,000. Jennifer met me at the closing with champagne. "Congratulations, Sarah, you're a homeowner." "I'm a millionaire," I corrected, pulling up my piece. Investment portfolio on my phone. "As of this morning." She blinked at the screen. "How did you—" "I'm lucky," I said simply. Lucky, and I'd lived this all before. The penthouse was everything I'd dreamed of in my first life. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern kitchen with marble countertops, master suite with a walk-in closet bigger than my childhood bedroom, 2 additional bedrooms, one of which I converted into an office. I furnished it slowly, carefully, choosing every piece. This was mine. No one could take it from me. I didn't hear from my family for 6 months after the closing. I assumed they'd moved on, focused on their own disasters. I was wrong. The knock on my door came on a Tuesday evening. I almost didn't answer. I wasn't expecting anyone, but something made me check the peephole. My mother stood in the hallway looking 10 years older than I remembered. Her hair was gray, her clothes worn. She looked small and tired. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Sarah," she breathed. "Thank God, I've been trying to find you for months." "What do you want?" "Can I come in, please? I need to talk to you." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. She walked into my penthouse, her eyes widening as she took in the soaring ceilings, the expensive furniture, the view. "How did you afford this?" she asked, and there was something ugly in her voice. "I worked hard. I invested wisely. I didn't give my money away." She flinched. "That's what I came to talk about. Sarah, your father and I were in trouble. The house is being foreclosed on next month. We have nowhere to go." "What about Maya?" "Maya can barely afford her own rent. She's still dealing with the legal issues from Derek. She can't help us." I crossed my arms. "And you think I will?" "You're our daughter." Mom's voice cracked. "Please, we made mistakes, but we're family. You have all this space. You could let us stay here just until we get back on our feet." I almost laughed. In my first life, I would have said yes. I would have let them move in, let them take over my home, let them bleed me dry again. No. "No, Sarah, we're going to be homeless." "You should have thought of that before you gave my money to Maya. Before you spent your lives treating me like I was worthless. Before you chose her over me, again and again and again. We didn't choose. Yes, you did. Every single day. Every dinner where she got steak and I got leftovers. Every Christmas where she got piles of presents and I got socks. Every time she needed money and you came to me, expecting me to hand it over." Mom's face crumpled. "We didn't realize—" "You didn't care. There's a difference." I walked to the door and opened it. "I'm not giving you money. I'm not letting you stay here. I'm not saving you. Figure it out yourselves." "How can you be so cruel?" she whispered. "I learned from the best." She left, crying. I closed the door and locked it. Didn't feel guilty, not even a little bit. The eviction happened in February. Aunt Rachel sent me photos, the house I'd grown up in, emptied out, a foreclosure notice on the door. My parents moved into a one-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town. Maya moved in with a friend. I moved on with my life. My startup was thriving. My portfolio hit $2 million. I took a vacation to Bali, first class. I started dating a kind, successful architect named Marcus, who knew nothing about my family and didn't care about my money. Life was perfect. Then came the lawsuit. Maya filed in March, claiming I'd stolen her money. The argument was insane, that I'd somehow tricked them into giving me the room deposit, that I'd known about Derek's fraud, that I'd manipulated the situation. She had no evidence because none of it was true, but she had a lawyer, some ambulance chaser working on contingency, and she was determined. The case was thrown out within 3 months. The judge actually laughed at Maya's claims. "Ms. Morrison," he said, addressing my sister, "you willingly gave your sister a check. She deposited it legally. The fact that your life circumstances changed afterwards is not her responsibility. Case dismissed." Maya tried to appeal. It was denied. That's when she finally broke. I got a call from Rachel. "Sarah, Maya's in the hospital. Psychiatric hold. She tried to hurt herself." I should have felt something. Sympathy, maybe. Guilt. But I just felt tired. "That's not my problem," I said. "Sarah, I know what they did to you, but she's still your sister." "No, she's not. Not in any way that matters." Rachel was quiet for a long moment. "You're right. I'm sorry. I just thought you should know." Maya spent 2 weeks in psychiatric care. When she got out, she moved 3 states away. I heard through Rachel that she'd changed her name, started over. Good for her, I thought distantly. My parents made one final attempt to contact me. A letter delivered through Rachel. "Dear Sarah," it began, we know we failed you. We know we don't deserve your forgiveness. But please understand, we love you. We always loved you. We just didn't know how to show it." I burned the letter. Love wasn't words, love was action, and they'd shown me exactly how they felt through every action they'd ever taken. 2 years later, my startup was acquired. My stock options were worth $8 million. I quit corporate life and started my own investment firm with Rachel as my partner. We helped other women who'd been overlooked, underestimated, taken advantage of, build wealth and security. I never married Marcus, but we stayed friends. I dated casually, traveled extensively, and built the life I'd always dreamed of. My penthouse appreciated to $800,000, just as I'd known it would. I didn't sell. It was mine, my trophy, my proof that I'd won. On my 34th birthday, the age I'd been when I died in my first life, I stood on my balcony with a glass of champagne, looking out over the city. I'd been given an impossible gift, a second chance. And I'd used it to build everything I'd lost, everything I'd been denied. My family had thought I was weak. They'd thought I needed them, that I'd always come crawling back. They'd been wrong. I didn't need them. I never had. All I'd needed was the courage to choose myself. The last I heard, my mother was working as a cashier at a grocery store. My father was driving for a rideshare company. They'd declared bankruptcy. They'd aged badly, worn down by stress and regret. Maya was a manager at a call center, still paying off Derek's legal fees, still trying to rebuild her credit. And me? I was free. I finished my champagne and went back inside, closing the balcony door behind me. Tomorrow, I had a meeting with a potential client, a young woman whose family was pressuring her to co-sign on a loan. I'd help her say no. I'd teach her what I'd learned, that family is only worth keeping when they treat you like you matter. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's simply living well while they fall apart, and I was living very, very well. The penthouse, the money, the success, it was all real. All mine. Built by my choices, my knowledge, my refusal to be a victim again. In my first life, that room deposit was the beginning of the end. I'd lost everything, my savings, my credit, my future. I'd spent years struggling, always one disaster away from homelessness, all because I'd been too kind, too trusting, too desperate for family approval. This time, that same moment was the beginning of my empire. I'd let them take the $50,000. I'd let them think they'd won. And while they celebrated their victory, I'd already bought the penthouse, built my fortune, and secured my future. They'd taught me to be ruthless. They'd taught me that family could be your greatest enemy. They'd taught me that kindness without boundaries was just weakness. I'd learned the lessons well. Now I was teaching others. My investment firm was growing, my reputation spreading. Women came to me with stories like mine, families that drained them, partners that used them, systems that exploited them. I helped them all because I remembered. I remembered what it felt like to be powerless, to be used, to watch people you love destroy you with a smile. And I remembered what it felt like to rise from the ashes stronger than before. My phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. Dinner tonight? I have a new client for you. Single mom, abusive ex demanding she liquidate her 401k for child support. That's really just extortion. Sounds familiar? I smiled. I'll be there. I grabbed my keys, my designer bag, the one I'd bought with my first big commission, and headed for the door. As I locked up my penthouse, I paused to look around one more time. This was justice. Not the courtroom kind, though I'd won there too. This was the deeper kind, the kind that settles in your bones and makes you whole. I'd been given a second life, and I'd used it to save myself. No family could take that from me. No one ever would again. 10 years after my rebirth, I attended a charity gala downtown. My firm was sponsoring the event. We donated heavily to organizations that helped women escape financial abuse. I was standing by the bar talking to a potential investor when I saw them. My parents. They were working the event. Dad in a catering uniform, mom checking coats. They looked ancient, worn down by time and hardship. They didn't recognize me at first. I'd changed my hair, lost weight, carried myself differently. I wore a dress that cost more than their monthly rent and diamonds that had been a gift from a grateful client. Then Mom's eyes met mine. I watched the recognition dawn, watched her face go pale. She dropped the coat she was holding. Dad turned to see what was wrong, and his eyes found me too. For a long moment, we just stared at each other across the crowded ballroom. Then I turned back to my conversation, dismissing them as thoroughly as they'd once dismissed me. They were nothing to me, less than nothing. They'd given me my first life, true, but they'd destroyed it. I'd given myself my second life, and it was glorious. Ms. Morrison, my investor asked, are you all right? Perfect, I said, smiling, just remembering how far I've come. I never saw them again after that night. I heard later that they'd moved away, unable to bear living in a city where their daughter was successful and they were invisible. Good. Let them live with the weight of their choices. Let them lie awake at night, wondering what would have happened if they'd chosen differently, loved differently, been better. I didn't wonder. I knew exactly what would have happened. I'd lived it. And this time, I'd written a different ending. The best part? Every morning when I woke up in my penthouse in my California king bed with its Egyptian cotton sheets, I remembered that first moment, the moment I'd watched Mom hand Maya that envelope. In my first life, it had destroyed me. In my second life, I'd let it happen, knowing it would destroy them instead. That was power. That was victory. That was revenge. And it tasted like champagne on a balcony overlooking a city that had once seemed impossible to conquer. I'd conquered it. I'd conquered everything. All because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the best thing you can do for people who hurt you is absolutely nothing. Let them dig their own graves. Let them lie in them. And let yourself soar. I soared.